Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. And if true crime is your jam, and like me, you enjoy delving into unsolved cases, trying to figure out who done it, please consider subscribing. Also, if you find value in my content, please hit that like button. Happy day, my true crime friends. I hope you're all well and good. Pretty much every YouTuber who's been able to visit the Wells property at 110 Ben Hill Road in person comes away saying the same things. There's no way Summer wandered off that property, and there's no way a stranger came up there and abducted her. As soon as people see how steep the hill is, how dense the foliage on it is, how difficult to maneuver the driveway is without a four-wheel drive truck, and how narrow and rarely traveled Ben Hill Road is, they all come to the same conclusion. Summer didn't walk away, and a stranger didn't come up there and grab her. Hearing Jimmy of Dolly Vision say that he had a difficult time just finding Ben Hill Road made me think about how isolated the Wells property is. It also made me think that for Summer's parents, Don Wells and Candace Bly, that isolation was likely an advantage and something welcomed. For Don, who's an admitted SAer and who many of us have heard committing acts of DV against Candace in the background of recorded calls, such an isolated home would have allowed him a significant amount of control over Candace, bringing her to live on an isolated rural property, and sometimes, at least before they got that red Subaru, leaving her there without reliable transportation, were ways in which Don could have power and dominance over Candace. It didn't help that Candace was financially dependent on Don. Without a steady full-time job of her own and her own stash of cash, which I firmly believe every woman should have no matter what, Candace was pretty much stuck at 110 Ben Hill Road, stuck with a husband who, it's been said, often left her and their 4 children for weeks at a time, allegedly sometimes without enough money for food, stuck with squirrely young kids who probably were a handful at times, and stuck with a life that she probably didn't plan, one that she couldn't easily get out of, and one where making things better for herself financially wasn't really going to happen. She doesn't strike me as a go-getter who wanted a career. Maybe she did deep down, but her drinking and possible addictions were going to get in the way of that. Disillusion with one's circumstances and a husband who often leaves and has been said to sleep with other women may explain why Candace allegedly drank every day starting around 5 p.m.-ish. Numbing herself was likely a cheap way to cope if she did have emotional pain, physical pain, a sense of hopelessness. I say cheap because I don't think Candace had access to a therapist, and she doesn't strike me as the type who would seek out that kind of help. Where could Candace go if Don was committing DV against her? Who would hear if she screamed out there? Well, maybe Jody Sue and her kids on the other hill. But would they come over and rescue her? And would they be able to fix Candace's ongoing problems? Jody Sue had her own issues with DV that she was dealing with. Isolation is a well-known tactic of controlling partners. Many of these types purposefully move their partners away from friends and family in a bid to isolate them in every way possible. Look at Barry Morphew and the house he and his wife Suzanne purchased in Salida, Colorado. Suzanne was said to not have wanted to move there. Her family and friends were back in Indiana, and that's where she was said to be the happiest. The large house in Colorado, surrounded by trees and far from people who cared about Suzanne, appears to have been a dangerous place for her, at least in my opinion. The cell service at the house was also said to be poor, adding a further layer to fight through for a connection to others. In the Wells case, Candace was also living in a remote location where the cell service is said to be spotty. She too was taken to that property by her husband. It likely wasn't her first choice, at least not in the beginning. But unlike Suzanne Morphew, Candace Bly probably eventually saw some advantages to living at the isolated 110 Ben Hill Road. Residing on a rural hill surrounded by 11.2 acres allowed her to let loose without witnesses. She could have strangers stay over and party without the prying eyes of neighbors. If she was upset with the kids, she could probably punish them to excess without anyone calling the cops or judging her. I'm not saying she did this for certain, but there have been stories about Candace using extreme methods to chastise her kids. It was also a place where she could drink to excess, even while being in charge of 4 little kids. There was plenty of room outside for the kids to run around and play, and Candace could openly drink without anyone seeing her and judging her for it. Also, knowing how hard it is to get up the hill without being noticed, she probably felt fine leaving the kids to play without her constant watchful eye. My neighbors have young kids, and when they play outside in their yard, either mom or dad is always out there with them the whole time. For Candace, she probably felt okay drinking her whiskey as her kids frolicked on the hill. And on most days, nothing bad likely happened. Perhaps a scraped knee, a bee sting, but there's always that chance that one day, Candace's way of doing things, her getting toasted without keeping a vigilant eye on the kids, her taking the risk of not watching them play, there's the chance that things could go wrong. If Don and Candace lived in a typical neighborhood where neighbors can see and hear all the goings-on at their home, CPS would likely have come a-knocking a lot more often than they already did. Neighbors would have seen the messy yard filled with abandoned cars and other dangerous-looking debris, the questionable visitors staying over, the condition of the children, the inebriated mother and father. Don and Candace would not have gotten away with the lifestyle they were living for as long as they did if they had to reside in a neighborhood where the houses are close together, where there's a homeowners association, and where the parents sit and watch their children when they play outside. Don and Candace also wouldn't have been able to deal with, say, a gravely ill child. Take her away from the property without others noticing. Jody Sue claims to have heard a scream on June 15th, and I personally believe her. She also heard Candace drive up and down the rocky, hard-to-maneuver driveway twice that afternoon. Those sounds are pretty much the only clues that something was off with the Wells that day, aside from them screaming Summer's name later in the afternoon. What I'm trying to say is that 110 Ben Hill Road plays a critical role in the Summer Wells case. It helped enable Don and Candace to live the way they wanted to without much interference from the law. Remember, they don't trust the law. To live a slightly shady, debauched lifestyle with too much booze and possibly illicit drugs. 110 Ben Hill Road sheltered the Wells from prying eyes. It may also have hidden their unusual behaviors on June 15, 2021, allowing them to handle a crisis situation perhaps a life-threatening accident, in their own way, without calling for an ambulance and without any witnesses.
She runs on this path down here.
It's not the prettiest house in the world, but...
Huh?
I said it's not the most beautiful house in the world.
You know what? It's a house.
It's a...
You know.
Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Now you know the drill. Please hit that like button.